Now we've started our project, have a topic, a research problem, a question to answer, and sources we've read. So now we move on to part 3, making a claim and supporting it. But let's first recap what we covered previously. After accumulating sufficient data, you need to think about what all your data add up to when you prepare for your first draft. You need to organize your data in a way that will help you use them to formulate your claim and get closer to an answer to your problem. When you do this, you need to remember that organizing under the most obvious topics is easiest, but may be the least useful, as you may end up stating the opinions and the sources instead of discoveries you've made by thinking about it yourself. Then you have to actually start planning your first draft. You need a principle of organization, a way of organizing that comes not from the topics you've organized your sources in, but from your questions and the answers in the data. You have to organize these answers to support the central claim that you want to make. In other words, the main point of your paper. The support for this claim will be your research argument. So, what are research arguments like? Research arguments are different from everyday arguments. Remember that a research argument is just like a thoughtful conversation with the readers, where you explore ideas together, instead of debating and defending your position. In your research arguments, you're expected to make claims that you think are new and important enough to interest your readers. Then, to explain those claims as if your readers are asking you why you believe them, supporting yourself with evidence. But thoughtful readers will question your evidence or even your logic, so you need to explain your argument, breaking it into subordinate claims that need to be supported with even further evidence. You might even have to explain why you think your evidence logically supports your claim at all, and answer the reader's objections and alternatives to your argument. You can do this by anticipating the reader's views and interests, which can also help you think through to the solution of your problem. The objective is not to force your opinion on your readers or to overwhelm them with hard facts. Instead, it's to put forward your claims in a way that helps them recognize their own best interests in believing you by anticipating their views and positions, as well as helping you to explore the limits of your evidence and test the soundness of your reasoning in order for you to work with readers to find and understand a truth. To do this, you need to know how to construct a good research argument. In this chapter, we will briefly survey the 4 elements of a research argument. This is a diagram showing the connections between the elements of a research argument. As shown, a research argument should offer a claim, evidence that supports the claim, a warrant, which is a general principle that explains why you think your evidence is relevant to your claim, and qualifications, which make your claim and evidence more precise and limit the scope of your claim. We'll go over this just a bit later. The 2 elements that you must always state explicitly are your claim and the supporting evidence. Your claim states what you want readers to believe. Your evidence should be the reasons why they should believe it. For example, A says, you should be checked for diabetes, because your glucometer reading is 200. Both of these elements must be stated explicitly. If either one were missing, the argument would be weak. If A were to tell B, you should be checked for diabetes, with no justification, B would think it to be A's ungrounded opinion, since to B, A has just randomly said something with no reason. On the other hand, if A were to tell B only that your glucometer reading is 200, B would think it to be pointless data, because again, to B, A has just recited a random fact. So now, we know that both the claim and evidence are necessary in a good argument, but this isn't all. Just claims and evidence are enough for ordinary conversations, but in research papers, they usually are not enough because you need to make a significant claim where you ask your readers to change their minds about something important. Actually, even the example we just saw about diabetes would be better off with these additional elements. Most readers resist changing their minds easily, so you will need to expand your argument with 2 more elements, warrants and qualifications. We'll look into warrants first. The warrant of an argument is its general principle, an assumption that connects the claim and the evidence into a logically related pair. Simply put, it's the reason why you think your claim and your evidence are relevant. In casual conversation, we nearly never ask for a warrant, as claims and evidence seem to be connected obviously enough. But for other kinds of claims, like claims and research arguments, an explicit, clear warrant needs to be included, as readers are asked to change their minds about things that are not so obvious. That often means that you have to convince your readers that your evidence is relevant to your claim, thus that it's believable. Let's go back to this example. A claims that B should be checked for diabetes because his glucometer reading is 200. But why does having a glucometer reading of 200 mean that B should be checked for diabetes? How are they related? Because we don't know the warrant, we don't know how. Here, the warrant is that a glucometer reading of 200 is a sign of diabetes. We can understand the link between the claim and evidence only if we know the warrant. Of course, it's possible that the reader rejects that warrant as false. Then the reader would question the whole argument, even if the evidence and claim are both factually true, because the reader would think that they are logically irrelevant and thus the claim unsubstantiated. Now we know what warrants are. Then what are qualifications? Qualifications limit the certainty of your conclusions, specify the conditions in which your claim is true, and address your reader's potential objections. You should qualify your argument appropriately whenever you make a claim that is true only under certain conditions or when it's not 100% certain. When you qualify your argument, you acknowledge the obstacles between your claim and your evidence. Let's look back at this example. A says, you should be checked for diabetes because your glucometer reading is 200, and that much glucose in the blood is a sign that you have diabetes, unless you just ate something sugary. Now B knows that getting 200 on the glucometer doesn't always mean having diabetes. The more complex and interesting your argument, the more qualifications you're likely to need, because claims in complicated arguments are never 100% true under all circumstances. So, in your research paper, it's very likely that you need qualifications. Be aware that you should show legitimate caution about your results without dodging the question. Now we've covered all 4 elements of a research argument: claim, evidence, warrant, and qualifications. Remember, research arguments are just like a thoughtful conversation. As you put arguments together, it may help to imagine yourself in a conversation with your readers, with you making claims, your readers asking good questions, and you answering them as best as you can. In your answers, you may be able to identify the elements of your research argument. The only difference compared to a conversation is that in a research report, you must answer your readers' questions as well as ask questions on their behalf. As a writer, making good arguments by having this thoughtful conversation with the readers is very important. Most readers will want to know why you make a claim because they want to understand your argument better, to be part of the conversation. When you acknowledge their interest by managing claims, evidence, warrants, and qualifications, you present yourself as a considerate, thoughtful, and trustworthy writer. The best kind of argument is cooperative and respectful, where the writer acknowledges the reader's desire to work with him or her in developing and testing new ideas. But this structure of argument does even more. It can guide your research, since if you understand how your sources put together their arguments, you will be able to read them more critically. And if you understand how to put together your argument, you'll be able to plan your first draft more efficiently. And that's the end of this chapter. The next chapter is Chapter 8, where we'll look at claims and evidence in more detail.